When it comes to ancient civilizations, most people think of the mysterious Maya, known for creating an incredibly precise calendar. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll find that the calendar itself hasn't survived. It was reconstructed from various sources. And throughout its history, it seems to have undergone at least 4 reforms. Its accuracy was so phenomenal that it had an error of 5 days every 19 years. Now, if we consider that the Maya civilization emerged during what was essentially the early medieval period, its aura of ancientness quickly fades in comparison to Eurasia. Speaking of ancient civilizations, some might also recall the Trypillians, who came close to this status since some of their settlements are considered proto-cities. However, they were likely halted on this path by invasions from the eastern steppes, ancestors of modern Europeans. One branch of these invaders, represented by the Sintashta culture, founded the settlement of Archaeum, which some non-archaeologists have called a city, though technically it wasn't one. Overall, the fascination with mysterious ancient civilizations is somewhat like the allure of secret societies. As one writer, whose name escapes me, once noted, Freemasons, Illuminati, and other groups that everyone talks about can't truly be called secret since everyone already knows about them. So today, we're not discussing ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, or the inhabitants of the Indus Valley or the Yellow River. Instead, we'll focus on a civilization whose existence remained a secret until the 1970s. Even now, most people who aren't involved in archaeology or history have never heard of it. It was discovered in what is now one of the republics of the former USSR. The phrase Bactrian-Margian archaeological complex is hardly familiar to the average person. Yet behind this unremarkable name lies a civilization over 4,000 years old, located in present-day Turkmenistan, southern Uzbekistan, northern Afghanistan, and western Tajikistan. While it's difficult to pinpoint what they called themselves, later Persian writings referred to this ancient Central Asian state as Margush. In the Avesta, it's known as Muru. You might also come across the term Margiana civilization, while French and American researchers often use the term Oxus civilization. It's important to understand that although Central Asia is an ancient region rich in archaeological heritage, by the 20th century the peoples living there remained largely traditional and archaic societies far removed from the Industrial Revolution. The modern history of the region has been, and in some ways still is, politically, economically, and militarily unstable. This instability naturally hinders large-scale archaeological research across these vast Asian territories. In today's economic climate, archaeological research is expensive, and conducting it properly, using all the tools and methods of modern science, is very expensive. However, the delay in discovering Margush wasn't just due to a lack of funding or ongoing conflicts. The problem is that humans tend to view nature as unchanging, forgetting that rivers change their courses, seas dry up, and climates evolve. So, what's the point of searching for something in an arid desert?
What's the Karakum Desert? We were told it's one of the greatest deserts on Earth, where no human foot has ever set foot. But one day in 1972, on a whim, I got into a car and drove deep into the sands. And then I saw this city.
But everything changes, and over 4,000 years, some Asian rivers have shifted their courses by 100 kilometers. Back in ancient times, the massive Aral Sea was connected to the Caspian. So, although Margush is often called the Oasis Civilization or the Civilization of Sands, the climate in the region was likely much more hospitable back then. A monumental effort to study the sites of the Bactrian-Margian archaeological complex was undertaken by Dr. Victor Sarianidi, and these sites are stunning. The most famous is Gonur Tepe, located in southeastern Turkmenistan. It's about 4,300 years old, making it slightly older than Archaeum, and it spans roughly 40 hectares, about 20 times larger in area. Gonur Tepe was primarily a temple complex, complete with fortifications whose walls were about 3 meters thick. Some walls, despite their thickness and presumably significant original height, were purely decorative. The main construction material was sun-dried bricks. The inhabitants of Margush, it seems, were fire worshippers. Fires constantly burned in their temples, creating something akin to altars of eternal flame. The ash from these fires was considered sacred and was carefully collected into containers, which archaeologists still find today. The mention of fire worship inevitably brings to mind one of the oldest religions, Zoroastrianism. However, the Oasis civilization, or civilization of sands, predates Zoroastrianism by a long stretch. The idea of an ever-burning flame can be traced back to the Stone Age, when early humans, not yet Homo sapiens, maintained fires in caves for years, leaving behind massive layers of ash for archaeologists to uncover. This is often explained by the fact that ancient humans could use fire but hadn't yet learned how to create it. But who knows? Maybe fire worship was one of humanity's earliest cults, predating even our species. Of course, this is just speculation on my part. Gonur Tepe also had pools connected by filters made of carefully arranged camel thorn reeds, which are said to have antibacterial properties. By the way, the largest pool measures 100 by 60 meters, that's twice the size of a modern Olympic swimming pool. Some have dubbed these constructions the Temple of Water. If that's the case, Gonur Tepe could be seen as a sanctuary dedicated to the elements, functioning uninterruptedly for roughly 7 centuries. There's even mention of a primitive sewage system. At another site, Altin Tepe, archaeologists uncovered a structure resembling a Sumerian ziggurat. However, what I find most fascinating is that the material culture and genetics of Margush inhabitants point to connections with the Indus Valley civilization, Mesopotamia, and the populations of the northern steppes. I won't delve too deeply into genetics because, let's face it, debates about haplogroups and the origins of Indo-Europeans often forget one key fact. Genetically speaking, we're all migrants from Africa. Humans are a surprisingly genetically similar species. Differences between people from China, Germany, or Kenya are often smaller than those between monkeys in the same troop. That said, it's worth noting that the people of Margush were predominantly Caucasoid, just like modern Turkmen, Afghans, and several other ethnic groups in the region. Studying Margush offers a fresh perspective on ancient civilizations, not as isolated cultures lost in vast spaces, but as interconnected hubs of trade and exchange. Despite being part of the Bronze Age, a rich burial in Margush revealed a pin made of meteorite iron. This pin was adorned with a golden crescent and an 8-pointed star. In general, craftsmanship in Margush was highly developed. As in other parts of Bronze Age Eurasia, we find anthropomorphic figurines, small clay statues of humans, mostly women, as well as animals. There are also some fantastical figures tied to mythology. Evidence suggests that the people of Central Asia worked with precious metals, knew how to make faience, and were familiar with the wheel about 4 millennia ago. The population of ancient cities like Altin Tepe and Namazga Tepe likely reached around 5,000 people, a figure comparable to medium-sized cities in medieval Rus. Of course, there's a 3,000-year gap between them. However, civilization isn't just cities with administrative and temple complexes, it's also about literacy. Some inhabitants of Margush, or at least a portion of them, appear to have been literate. This is hinted at by the discovery of an Akkadian seal belonging to King Sargon, who reigned 43 centuries ago, as well as an Indian Harappan seal. The presence of seals from other civilizations indicates a level of commercial activity and regional importance. According to linguist Alexander Lubotsky, the people of the Margiana civilization spoke a pre-Indo-European substrate language. This was a language spoken in Iran and the Indian subcontinent before the arrival of Indo-Europeans. Interestingly, archaeological layers in Margush lack the typical signs of steppe invasions that are so common elsewhere. Known sites appear to have been abandoned without any evidence of violent conflict. But did the people of Central Asia have their own written language? It's hard to confirm a fully developed writing system, though some symbols found at Altin Tepe resemble Proto-Sumerian pictographs. The existence of an independent script remains questionable, and there's a reason for that. Writing systems first arose to solve practical problems, primarily related to collecting taxes and running state affairs. In the territory once occupied by ancient Margush, or at least in the parts that archaeologists have reached, around 500 sites have been identified. Sadly, only about a dozen have been excavated, mostly temple complexes, and even those have often been partially studied. I think it's fair to say that over 90% of what this civilization left behind still lies buried beneath the sands of the Karakum Desert and surrounding areas. All in all, one can only wonder how much more this region has to offer to future researchers.